a dash of mystery, a sparkle of magic, and all things cozy. Join your host, Elle Hartford, for Cozy Alchemy, a proud member of the Authors on the Air network. Hello and welcome to Cozy Alchemy, a podcast all about cozy, chirpy books. I'm Elle, and I'm here today with Joanna Campbell Slan, author of the Kiki Lowenstein mysteries, and many more, and we will get to them in just a minute. But first, Joanna's going to start us off with a game of two truths and a lie.
Okay. Let's see. I'm one of twins. I have a twin sister.
Cool.
I own 60 Steinway pianos.
Oh my goodness.
And I once had 13 Great Danes.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. 13 Great Danes sounds like a lot, but it also kind of goes with the whole theme of this series that we're talking about today. Oh, man. It's 60 pianos. That's so many pianos. I have to say, I bet you put it in there because it's true, but I'm going to go with it. I say that one's the lie, the second one.
Nope, the lie is I don't have a twin sister. I'm the oldest of three. And we own a Steinway piano dealership, so we have 60 Steinways in stock.
Of course. Of
Yeah.
course. That would make an excellent logic puzzle question, I think, because I'm over here picturing, I'm like, what kind of house?
Oh, yeah, the house
But
is
no,
not big
for
enough
a
for
shop,
that.
of course.
Yeah, they take up a lot of room. They do.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. My mind instantly went like, well, maybe if they were like Christmas ornaments.
Oh,
But
no,
a dealership makes
these
much
aren't
more sense.
miniatures, believe
Yeah.
me. Some of them
Oh,
are 9
man.
feet long.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that means too that the Great Danes is true as well.
Yes,
How did that
yes.
happen?
I had a Great Dane who had puppies. Well, actually, I had
Oh,
3 Great Danes, and then one of them had 10 puppies. So at one time, I
wow.
had 13 Great Danes, and I was just like,
Oh,
this is unbelievable. It was
yeah.
fun. Um, Great Danes have really touchy tummies.
Mm.
So when they eat something they shouldn't, that is a big problem. But
Ooh,
I really loved having them. They were great dogs.
nice. I bet. That's I love giant, especially dogs that are on the fluffier end. So right, like Newfoundlands and Saint Bernards, but
Oh,
to have a Great Dane is probably on my list somewhere as well. They seem so cool.
they really are. They're much more gentle than you would guess. My
Yeah.
daughter-in-law and son have a Bernese Swiss Mountain Dog,
Oh,
and it weighs
yeah.
145 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that's fluffy, Elle. So if you want something fluffy,
Yes,
it's
yes.
like a
Oh,
big roll of carpet coming at you.
I know. I'm all about it. My husband doesn't get it at all, but yeah.
Oh,
The
well,
fluffier, the better.
yeah.
But in any case, before we talk too much about dogs, um, today we're actually here to focus on Die Die Birdie, which is your latest Kiki Lowenstein mystery.
Yes.
Can you give us just a quick setup of the story?
Yes. As a lot of books are, and as a lot of authors know, it started with something that actually happened to me, and that is when I was in college, I worked my way through college by working 40 hours a week in a pet store.
Mm.
And one day I came in and there was a big hubbub because a boa constrictor had gotten out of his cage and he had wandered over into the cage with a pair of peach-faced lovebirds and he swallowed one of them. But then the snake couldn't get out of the cage because he was too fat. And the other peach-faced lovebird just sat there going, "Argh, argh." Like,
Oh.
go away, go
Yeah.
away. And that was one of the things, in life you kind of have these little Polaroid moments that kind of sit in the back of your head and you think someday. And so
Yeah.
that made me think about what if that happened in a Kiki book. And then the other thing that happened, because when you write a book or a mystery in particular, it's like putting together a puzzle. You have all these puzzle pieces and you kind of fit them together so they lock up. The other thing that happened was I met this woman who had had in vitro fertilization. And she told me she and her husband were discussing adopting out the rest of their fertilized eggs. And I had never heard of that. I didn't know that you adopted them out. It makes perfect sense when you think about it, but I didn't know
Yeah.
that. And then the third part was I was talking with my friend Neil Plaxey about, well, if you were Jewish and you were adopted, would you be accepted as a Jew or not? So all those things came together. And
Yeah.
you can see how, I'm sure.
I absolutely can, especially because like you say, like the the constrictor, the snake, and the lovebirds, that happens pretty upfront, like in the first couple
Right,
chapters, right?
right.
Yeah,
First chapter, yeah.
yeah, and I can't believe that actually happened to you. I mean, when you're
Yeah.
reading it, you're like, oh, okay, but to imagine it truly happening is, ooh,
It
unfortunate for the birds.
unfortunate for the bird that played real havoc with the inventory because you go from a matching set to one, and what do you do with one? So yeah, it was pretty crazy. The whole job situation, the pet shop, would be worthy of I think a TV series because there were so many weird things that happened. But you know,
I can imagine so. I can imagine so. Well, and so you touched on something else that I was eager to talk about because the book is very cozy, but it does dive into kind of this difficult history, of
right,
being Jewish, dealing with the Holocaust survivors,
right.
and that sort of thing. How did you approach incorporating that into a cozy book?
I always have a social issue in my books. And that started because I thought, cozies are really lovely but they can be so full of fluff. And there's so much going on in the world and there's so much worth talking about that I I wanted my books to stand the test of time in that I wanted them to entertain people and I wanted them to uplift people, but I also wanted something that people would say, "Wow, I hadn't thought about that." And so that's how I approached the books. Now the Holocaust thing, I had done some research about that and I've met some Holocaust survivors. And I actually wanted my son, when he was little, to meet a Holocaust survivor so he could see the letters, the numbers on the man's arm, because that'll be the last generation. Your people your age will be the last generation who can say, I met a real survivor. So that was important to me. And then I had read and thought some about how that influenced the survivors, but I hadn't thought that much. And I started to think about how does that influence the survivors' kids, and how does something like that get passed along? Because trauma doesn't just happen to one generation; it happens to successive generations. So I did research on it, and I was just really fascinated and surprised by it, and it went into the book.
Yeah, that's I. Okay, there's so much there that I really want to talk about. Um, Especially going back to this idea of, yeah, like there can be a lot of fluffiness in cozies, right? And
Yes.
sometimes the genre kind of gets stereotyped for being that way.
Yes.
So I really love the intentionality
Thank you.
of addressing issues. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's something I was just talking about it in a previous podcast episode or interview. The kind of what I see, at least, and you can share your thoughts, please, as well. I feel like the cozy genre has sort of a unique position of being able to address these social issues in a way that is very humane, and also you know that things on the whole are going to work out at the end, so you're not necessarily overly stressed
Downhearted.
or anxious the whole time, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Absolutely. I think you hit it on the head. Minnie Pearl, who was a country western comedian, singer, grand old opera, used to say that laughter is God's hand on the shoulder of a weary world.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that the best way to discuss something difficult is to wrap it in laughter. Because when
Mm.
people are laughing, they're sharing their humanity. And so cozies are perfectly positioned for talking about tough things because you have that levity, you have the expectation that everything's going to be okay, but you can also touch on some pretty devastating things. One of my books is about spousal abuse. Uh,
Ooh.
I also wrote one about COVID, and
Mm.
I'm very proud of that book because I was thinking to myself, should I or should I not write about COVID? And my grandson was born during that time. And I thought, how in the world can I explain to Landon that people hoarded toilet paper? I mean, it doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. Or how confused we were and how information kept switching and the losses and how families were split up. So I incorporated that in my book, and I always try to show different people's perspectives. It's not about drumming home one perspective. It's like these people felt this way, these people felt that way, and
Right.
then it's how that impacts the family.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and on that note, one of the things I had written down is that you do have an extensive community, right, around
Yes,
Kiki.
yes.
And especially because this is book 19, which we can talk about later.
I'm working on
Just
book 20, so yes.
it's so cool. But as part of that, reading the book, it was very clear that you've got all of these side characters, and they've all
Mhm.
had their own arcs over the series.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you manage that?
Not well. What I do is I'll take a notepad and I'll write out the names of the secondary characters and I'll write out where they are, what's going on in their lives. Because when you think about it, it's not just what you or you and your husband are
Mm-hmm.
going through or dealing with. It's also like if you have siblings, what's going on with them, or a good friend, what's going on with
Yeah.
them. And early on, another cozy author told me she was writing a craft cozy. And she said, I'm just getting so bored with this. And I thought, okay, how can I make it so that I'm not bored? And it was including these people and making their lives interesting and giving them something to worry about, fret over.
Mm.
That I felt made richened. Is there such a word? I'm like Shakespeare, I'm creating
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
It enriched my book. It made it more enjoyable for me to write. And I think it gives my books more depth because you're going to recognize yourself in one of those characters.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. And it does then of course lend itself so well to being able to see different sides of an issue or different, or and also just in the cozy fashion, right? Seeing people come together.
Absolutely, because I think one of the strengths of cozies is that it's about found families and the families we piece together.
Yeah.
So there's this community, and of course that's how the mystery is solved, but it's also how those people support each other. And I'm a big believer in women supporting other women.
Mm.
Uh, I just had new business cards made, and they say strong women rock. And on the back of it, it's a quotation from a woman named Clementine Paddleford. And she says something like, "Daughter, never grow a wishbone where your backbone should be." And so
Ooh.
I want to show these women supporting each other as they all go through trials and they grow backbones.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, and I think it definitely comes through.
Oh, good, good.
Yes.
I hope so
Absolutely.
because
Yeah.
when the series starts, Kiki's pretty downtrodden, and
Mm.
that's on purpose because I thought to myself, what's the worst thing that could happen to somebody? And I decided to put her in the worst possible situation. She's surrounded on all sides by things that aren't working in her life. And she feels she doesn't have a right for things to work out in her
Oh,
life.
yeah.
But then she's kicked into action. And then one by one, these women come into her life and they encourage her. One of them gives her a mug that says, "No more Mrs. Nice Guy." And
Nice.
I think that that's the way we have to show up in our lives for each other.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Um, well, and on that note, because we've kind of danced around it a little bit, and because you brought up, um, sometimes an author writing a long series, right? Maybe they could get bored or could run out of ideas.
Mhm.
How have you kept the series going? Do you have tips to share for others?
I think one of the beautiful things about getting older is you see things circle around and you see things resolve.
Mm.
Whereas when I was younger, I would think, how is this ever going to pan out and what's going to happen? By dint of staying alive, I've seen, how people cope and what goes on. I try to listen more than I talk. I try to pay great attention to people and to sincerely care about them. And that just keeps feeding my author mind. I
Right.
think of myself like a whale, not a whale reader, but a whale, because a whale sifts in all this water to pick out the food. And I try to cast a wide net, and then that keeps replenishing the well of ideas.
I love that image. That's so cool. That's so cool. Um, and it makes complete sense, right? Because you're constantly having fresh inspiration, and there's always more things in the world to write about. Like you brought up the pandemic, right? There's always
Right, right.
new issues to address and new characters to incorporate. It makes perfect sense.
I think
Um,
part of it is being sensitive to when people are hurting and what's hurting them too.
ah,
Because a cozy has a very obvious outward goal, solve the mystery. But
mm-hmm.
the inward goal is not always as clear. And I think that's what makes my books, I think, a little different than the average cozy, because there's an internal goal that the people have, that it's something that they're striving to heal.
Right. Right, yes. And we talk about this sometimes on the fantasy side of things, right? Because with the cozy alchemy, I've kind of bounced
Mhm.
around a bit in cozy genres. Um, and I think on the fantasy side of things, people have that kind of sense of like, okay, the character needs an internal drive as well, or something that they're working on. But yeah, in mystery, because we're thinking of our main character sometimes as purely a sleuth. Sometimes we can
Yes.
forget
Mhm.
that part. Yeah.
I think that happens a lot. I think that cozy mysteries can really veer to the side of being very lightweight and non-consequential. I know that I've thrown some against the wall when somebody tripped over a body, and it's like, so what? That I'm going to go make cookies. Well, uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how insensitive can you be? That's like hitting a dog with your car and just saying, "Well, I hope I didn't get anything on my car." You
Oh
know,
God. Yeah.
yeah, that's so gross and
Yeah.
so unfeeling. But if you look at people and you start to see how they hurt or what's going on, then it's such a rich world, and we can reach people on a different level.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And I completely agree.
Good. Good. And I think there's magic in that, Elle. I think there's magic and there's
Yes.
alchemy in it because what you're doing is I often think about that fairy tale of that girl whose father said she could spin straw into gold.
Mm-hmm.
Rumpelstiltskin. I don't even
Right.
know that the girl has a name, but I think of myself as
Go for it.
spinning straw into gold, taking something and making it so that it's worth more than what it might seem on the surface.
Yeah, no, 100%. And even just like yeah, like the story ends up being worth more for the healing of it. And also just the act of transformation, right? Like, and again,
Yes,
the alchemy. Yeah,
alchemy.
yeah.
And I
Okay.
think that the world is full of magic and magical things, whether it's a dragon or a, vampire or a shapeshifter. Yesterday in my lawn, I found a baby sea turtle. He's this big.
Oh, oh my
And
goodness.
I live 500 feet from the ocean,
Oh,
but he would have been going
nice.
the wrong way to wind up in my lawn. But
Yeah.
what happens is, like a seabird will grab one, or some predator will grab one and drop it. And so I picked this little guy up and I walked him to the water's edge and I let him go. And the whole time he's trying to swim and trying to swim and trying to swim. And I thought, man, what a miracle. And he's not giving up. I'm holding him. I am a giant compared to him.
Yeah.
He's just escaped the jaws of death. And what does he want to do? Get back in there. How cool is that? How miraculous is that?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
And it'll take him 30 years before he reproduces. That would be a stretch for a lot of people. And then he'll come right back to this beach.
Yeah, that's the incredible part, right?
It
Too. Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
is.
I grew up in Puget Sound,
Uh-huh.
Western Washington, and so
Mhm.
there it's the salmon, right? Everybody's very
Yeah.
invested in the salmon life
Yeah.
cycle, and yeah, once they imprint, it's the same thing. They'll imprint on the water and they'll come back. It really drives home the cyclical nature of life. Yeah.
Not only that, do you know that with the turtles, if they don't cross some of that sand, their internal compass isn't set. If you
Oh.
just pick them up willy-nilly and throw them in the water, they'll just swim in circles until they die. So
Oh.
I think of that as we all have our 15 feet of sand that we have to cross.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
magic. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's tough, but you got to do it. Yeah.
that's right. Choose your
Make
hard.
makes complete sense. And I just have to say right next to my desk is my I have a Russian tortoise, William.
Oh,
So he and I often like he has kind of that same like what you're talking about with the sea turtle, some of that same perseverance. But with him, it's funny because he'll be in the edge of his little box in the
hmm
corner, just like
hmm
I'm gonna get through this corner. I'm
That's
gonna go
right.
around and
That's
do
right.
anything,
That's
which
right.
normally I just kind of laugh at him about. But it is also very inspiring.
That's so cool. You'll have to tell me sometime how you wound up with a Russian tortoise and
Yeah,
whether he drinks vodka instead of water.
I think he would if he could. He's got that attitude.
You go, buddy.
All right. But coming back around to books, because you do have, you've got many. Um, Now, of course, Kiki's series is very cool because we have the different animals in all of them, right?
right?
Um, how about are there any other series that you'd like to highlight, or any other like favorite books that you've written?
Yeah, there are. There's the Jane Eyre series. It's called
Mm.
the Jane Eyre Chronicles, that one of Daphne. And I loved Jane Eyre as a kid. I grew up in this really terrible alcoholic environment. And
Mm.
I picked up a copy of Jane Eyre. It says an autobiography. And I didn't know that if the character's name's Jane Eyre and the author's name is Charlotte Bronte,
Yeah.
that can't be. But I saw that Jane's education gave her a way out of her life. And so I
Mm.
thought, that's the key, get an education. So that's important to me. But I'm really excited about two other ones. One is the Cara Mia Delgatto mystery series, and that's set here on the Treasure Coast of Florida. And
Nice.
this is such a weird place to live. I mean, where else do people throw a an alligator through the drive-up window of Wendy's, I mean,
Yeah.
hello. And I really enjoy writing that. And book 20 in the Kiki series, Cara, who's here on the Treasure Coast, and Kiki
Hmm.
together solve a mystery.
Oh,
And then
cool.
the other thing that I really love right now is I've been writing a series called the Friday Night Mystery Club. And I knew that the name was very close to Osmond's books and all those other things, but it had to be that. And
Mm.
it's about a group of women in 1986. And I distinctly remember starting my work career in 86, and we were supposed to dress like men and
Mm.
be just like a guy. And we thought we finally were going to crack the glass ceiling. And I met Gloria Steinem and I met Betty Friedan, and I I saw Maya Angelou and I saw Shirley Chisholm, and it was a wonderful
Right.
time. And we thought we were making such progress. And now, although I'm not a twin, I have two sisters and I have four nieces and a daughter-in-law, and I just think to myself, we're going backwards so fast.
Uh,
So I'm
mm.
hoping that these books will make people think about the world of a working woman, and what we need
Yeah.
to do to be able to keep those advances that we've made.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, talk about an important mission for a series of books. That's yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like, okay.
I know. Again, that's the advantage of living so long. I mean, to have seen those four women,
Oh,
and you
wow.
know, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. And I have to say, I do, of course, like going through your website and everything, the Jane Eyre uh, series did catch my attention because I also was a huge fan growing up of
Oh,
Jane Eyre.
yeah.
And for me too, it was like Charlotte Bronte herself, like the author. She was a big inspiration to me. And hearing you talk about seeing Jane Eyre, you know, get chances through education, I'm realizing in myself, like, that's probably one of the things that I really liked about Charlotte Bronte was how she was using her stories to kind of like uh, live other lives, resolve things in her own life, that sort of thing. Yeah.
She really lived a pretty miserable life.
Yeah.
And I don't think she was a very happy person. She wasn't a very happy sister. She was not very attractive. She was thwarted in love. And then when the
Mm.
book came out, she wrote it under a man's name and it was praised. But then when they found out a woman wrote it, that people were incensed. How dare she? And that's just a good reminder when you're an author or a public persona, people are going to take pot shots at you, even if you're Charlotte Bronte.
Right? Yeah. Even if in the end you're mostly remembered by people who love you, right? The
True,
people in the moment are still going to, yeah.
true. There will
Yeah.
still be trolls under every bridge. And unfortunately, most of them have internet access now.
Ugh, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're able to be a lot louder these days,
that's
depending on
right.
how much time you spend on the internet. But,
True.
all right. Okay. I ask this of everybody. What advice would you give to yourself if you could talk to yourself when you were just starting out?
I really bought into the idea that if I had an agent and I got a contract, that I would be okay, that
Um,
I would be on my way. And that is so not true. Um, and I think I would have said to myself, buckle your seatbelt, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
mm,
I have persevered despite those things, but I bought into that myth, and I see and hear people all the time who buy into that idea that they're going to write this book, and if they find an agent and the agent sells it, it's just wonderful from there.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I think the problem is you give up so much control of your career and your life. Yeah.
Yep,
And you let
yep.
people become gatekeepers who, by and large, live in New York City and see the world from a New York City centric place. And they're business people, and it's not a business that's run like any other business in the world. I mean, think about it. You don't get paid until you pay back your advance. You don't get sales figures as they happen, so you don't know whether your marketing works or not.
Yeah.
Portion of your sales can be held in reserve. I mean, I am very, very happy being an indie author. I remember my publisher telling me, people only want one book a year from you, Joanna. I don't know how writers can improve their craft if they're only writing one book a year. I mean, think about it. Would you play one tennis match a year? One concert?
No, yeah. That, excuse me. But no, that's yes. I I think that's perfect advice because I had a similar moment myself when I was starting out. For me, it very much as you're saying, like when I had my book in hand and I was querying and I got back a contract from a small press, so I was dealing with them directly. But yeah, that moment of realizing how much control you have to give up and how much of the journey is still ahead of you, right? Because you're querying your book, but the book doesn't have a cover. The book doesn't have, it's not necessarily final, and this is a long road and you're going to start it off by giving up so much.
Most people think that the longest part of the road is writing the book, but that's
Mm,
not it. I mean, that is definitely one part of it.
mm-hmm.
But if you're going to be in this for the long haul, and I think that the only people who should be in this for the long haul are people like me and maybe like you who find writing a compulsion. This is the way I process the world. It
Yes.
doesn't matter if I couldn't sell my books. It wouldn't matter. Although I'm fortunate that I make a good living doing that.
Mm-hmm.
This is who I am and how I see the world.
Yeah, no, I've said that repeatedly through the years. Yeah, because I was a writer before I started publishing, and if I stopped
Mhm.
publishing, I would still be writing. Because exactly as you say, it's how I process things.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
it when people say to me, I'm having such a hard time writing this book, a little voice inside me wants to say, then maybe you shouldn't. Or you should just write one so you can say you've done it and then move on because this career is not for the faint of heart.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it can depend, right? Sometimes people are having trouble writing the book because it's something that they're having trouble dealing with. They're trying to put something
Yes,
into the book while they are healing or,
right.
while they're
Processing
sorting it
it.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, And yeah, and in that case, it's very worthwhile to push through, like the sea turtles in William. But
Yes. And then keep going.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very good advice, though. Okay, and our final question, to end on sort of an uplifting note here. What is one win you've had in the past week? Anything, big or small. It could be tiny, even.
Well, there was that sea turtle,
Yeah, that is a good one.
and that's a big win. Um,
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that I've managed to get a pretty good first draft for Kiki number 20, and it had
Nice.
started on a wrong path, a wrong trajectory, and I had to like start over and tear it apart. So now I've got a good first draft, and by golly, I'm feeling good about that. It's
That
far away from done.
that is a good win though, to have the at least to have the first draft done, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, yeah, one
I
step down the road.
I think people would be astonished at how many drafts that I do. I don't know about you, but I'm writing a novella, or I've written a novella. My friend Neil Plaxi and I wrote a novella before called Death at the Dog Park. He wrote one and I wrote one. We put it together and did Death at the Dog Park. And it was so successful, we decided to do it again. And this one is called Santa and the Sleigh Dogs. I went through 37 drafts of that novella. And I was just like,
37.
oh my word, am I ever going to get rid of this book? Yeah, but that's what it
Speaking
took
of
to get it
writing being a
right.
compulsion.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. So it's a win when you get a solid draft, but that it ain't over yet.
Fair. But that's a good thing too. I find there's a lot of peace in knowing, like, okay, the path goes forward from here.
Oh, absolutely. And I really love the revision process because it's like polishing and perfecting and working in all the things. So yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. I feel like we could start a whole extra podcast episode about the writing process and revision and everything. But
Absolutely. Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if we could tap it with a magic wand, Elle?
yeah, yeah. So perfect.
And it's done. Hooray! Hooray!
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it.
I know. Sometimes I wish for that, and then I realize, no, exactly as you were saying, a lot of the benefit comes when you have to just muddle through and figure it out. That's when the magic really happens.
And maybe that's why we like turtles, because they muddle.
Yeah. So true. All right. On that note, thank you so much for being here.
Elle, it's a pleasure. You have such a delightful laugh.
Ah, thank you. Thanks. Okay, I will have all of your links and everything in the show notes so people can
Mm-hmm.
find you.
Mm-hmm.
Very much encourage people to do that and check out your books. Yeah, once more, yeah, thank you for being here. And listeners, I will talk to you next time. Cozy Alchemy is brought to you by Authors on the Air, and our theme music is by Cyberwave Orchestra. For everything else, blame Elle. You can find her online at ellehartford.com.